everybody. So we're going to wait for a couple, get this going here, wait for a couple people to come in here. Typically, I think we'll start to go live a couple minutes beforehand like we usually do, with a placeholder countdown that might help with enabling folks to get in here. So as mentioned before, good morning everybody. Grab your cup of Joe. Your cup of Jonah, I should say. So we're going to start with Book 1, Chapter 1 of Summa Contra Gentiles. Book 1, Chapter 1 is the office of the wise man. My mouth shall meditate truth, and my lips shall hate impiety. Proverbs. The usage of the multitude, which according to the philosopher is to be followed in giving names to things, has commonly been held that they are to be called wise, who order things rightly and govern them well. Hence, among other things that men have conceived about the wise man, the philosopher includes the notion that it belongs to the wise man to order. Now, the rule of government and order for all things directed to an end must be taken from that end. For since the end of each thing is its good, a thing is then best disposed when it is fittingly ordered to its end. By end here, he means purpose, right? We say the end justifies or doesn't justify the means, right? And so we see among the arts that one functions as the governor and the ruler of another because it controls its end. Thus, the art of medicine rules and orders the art of the chemist, because health, with which medicine is concerned, is the end of all the medications prepared by the art of the chemist. A similar situation obtains in the art of ship navigation in relation to shipbuilding, and in the military art with respect to the equestrian art and the equipment of war. The arts that rule other arts are called architectonic, as being the ruling arts. That is why the artisans devoted to these arts, who are called master artisans, appropriate to themselves the name of wise man. But since these artisans are concerned in each case with the ends of certain particular things, they do not reach to the universal end of all things. They are therefore said to be wise with respect to this or that thing, in which sense it is said that, quote, as a wise architect, I have laid the foundation, end quote, 1 Corinthians. The name of the absolutely wise man, however, is reserved for him whose consideration is directed to the end of the universe, which is also the origin of the universe. That is why, according to the philosopher, that's Aristotle, it belongs to the wise man to consider the highest causes. And that he treats of in the first book of the Metaphysics, when he just talks about what's the point of a philosopher? What is he supposed to do? Now, the end of each thing is that which is intended by its first author and mover. But the first author and mover of the universe is an intellect, as will be later shown. The ultimate end of the universe must therefore be the good of an intellect. This good is truth. Truth must consequently be the ultimate end of the whole universe, and the consideration of the wise man aims principally at truth. So it is that according to his own statement, divine wisdom testifies that he has assumed flesh and come into the world in order to make the truth known. Quote, "For this was I born, and for this came I into the world, that I should give testimony to the truth." End quote. The philosopher himself establishes that first philosophy is the science of truth, not of any truth, but of that truth which is the origin of all truth, namely, which belongs to the first principle, whereby all things are. The truth belonging to such a principle is clearly the source of all truth, for things have the same disposition in truth as in being. So what he's referencing here is interesting. It's from his work on metaphysics, Aristotle's principle that truth and good and being actually are all about the same things, but through a different lens. So truth is those things that are that exist, that it's considering how something is, but from the perspective of the mind. And then a goodness, all goodness, that universal good, is that through the lens of the will, right? So our will is drawn to the good, our intellect is drawn to the truth, but all of them is being or existence, or I should say being, through a certain lens or perspective. It belongs to one and the same science, however, both to pursue one of two contraries and to oppose the other. Medicine, for example, seeks to effect health and to eliminate illness. Hence, just as it belongs to the wise man to meditate, especially on the truth belonging to the first principle, and to teach it to others, so it belongs to him to refute the opposing falsehood. Appropriately, therefore, is the twofold office of the wise man shown from the mouth of wisdom in our opening words: to meditate and speak forth of the divine truth, which is truth in person, and to refute the opposing error. And then by impiety is here meant falsehood against the divine truth. This falsehood is contrary to religion, which is likewise named piety. Hence, the falsehood contrary to it is called impiety. Very interesting. And that's chapter 1. So it's interesting that he starts out with the name of wisdom and the office of the wise man, and goes from there to talk about, well, what kind of truths does the wisest man talk about? Yes, it's all of created things, but there's a hierarchy of the sciences where the more elevated the science, it governs the sciences beneath it. And we see that actually also in applied physics, for example, like as a way to check your problems when, if you're told, you got to calculate if you drop a brick or a ball from a tower, or from a height of so many feet, how fast is it traveling when it hits the ground? Well, if I finish my little applied math problem and I hand it into the teacher's going to say, hey, well, wait a second. You got a negative number. How can it have a negative velocity? So you know that's wrong. Like, whoa, but the math checks out. Well, no, you made a mistake, because we know scientifically from a physics perspective, right? When that hits the ground, it's got to have a positive velocity, right? Just before it hits the ground. So the higher sciences can and do and must judge the lower sciences. So this brings up kind of some interesting anomalies or rather things where we know we'll get into it later, I'm sure, with Aristotle, but philosophy can actually judge the conclusions of modern day science. For example, space, which is one of the dimensions of material things, is width and breadth. Those are measurements of a material object. So the idea that there can be a space which is a vacuum or a space which is infinite, it's by definition, because it's material, all material things are by definition limited. So to say that there's an infinite expanse is a contradiction. So true science can say, not possible. But it's interesting. So he's laying the groundwork here for a hierarchy of the sciences, a hierarchy of truths, and the most wise man and most whose office it is to order all of the sciences is, he says, according to Aristotle, is the philosopher, the wise man. He goes one step further and says, well, this is actually theology, because if we're looking at it from a perspective of faith, then we know that there's that theology is actually, it should be a rigorous science, just like philosophy should be a rigorous science. And a lot of the modern or contemporary philosophers, modernists, have made it all subjective. It should be based in a study of the uncaused cause, the first mover. And so therefore the philosopher should be the most rigorous scientist, who should be able to order and guide the lower sciences, which is an interesting perspective. That's a lot different than our popular understanding or feeling of philosophy, right? We see it as this kind of like abstract, esoteric, difficult thing to understand, kind of strange or immaterial or aloof. There's a lot of stereotypes or feelings we have about it a lot of times because it's completely lost its grounding in Greek thought, Aristotelian thought especially, but that whole era, they were all very concrete, which is wonderful. One thing I really liked, and I'd love to see what stuck out to you guys, but one thing I really liked about this first chapter here is this concept that, okay, well, yes, we are pursuing truth. We're trying to understand truth, that object of the intellect, which is also the end of the whole universe, is truth, is that first unmoved mover who is also truth. It's also the obligation of the wise man to refute error. So to pursue truth and to refute error. So, and I see official, I see Amy, you just found me. So wonderful. Okay. I think, let me know what you guys would like. I could do that, what I do for Philosopher King as well. I didn't do it this morning, and perhaps it's throwing people off a little bit. But I could go live a couple, 5-10 minutes in advance with a countdown, so people have time to get their cup of joe, right, and join me. So let me know if that would be helpful. I think I will do that in the future, and I can just edit it out before I put it up on Substack. But yeah, I'm excited. So the next question he's going to ask then is the chapter 2 for tomorrow. He's going to talk about what is the author's intention in the present work. So what is he trying to do? So it's interesting because he starts with setting up what is in the discussion in terms of the twofold office of the wisest of men, so to speak, in pursuit, is both to promote or to discover the truth and also to refute error. But interesting, one of his other treatises on teaching, which is what he's trying to do in this book, right, is he's trying to take us, he calls it a monoduxio, a leading by the hand. So he's going to take us through a thought process to teach us something. But what's interesting and beautiful is the teacher has two functions, according to Aristotle and Thomas. And that is, one, everybody understands truth. I mean, a teacher to impart new ideas to me, right? That's the primary sense when we understand teacher, right? To teach me new things. There's a secondary and perhaps even more important function of a teacher, which is to order the ideas that we already have. So by ordering them, the teacher can prepare the ground for the introduction of new ideas. So this should be really fun. So a lot of what he talks about is going to be, some of it, I should say, is going to be things that we may already know or understand. Like, we know there's an unmoved mover, we know all those things. But by presenting it in a certain way, in a certain order, beautifully, this idea of ordering is Thomas's golden gift. I feel it when you go through his stuff, you'll see. And as we continue reading through this, I think it's going to blow your mind, because his gift is he masterfully orders all things. When in it, it's just incredibly ordered, and we'll talk through that as we keep going. But he really like in this one, for example, he starts with a question about what do we call a wise man? Why do we call a man wise? And what is his job as a wise man? So the only other thing, one other thing before we wrap up here, in just a couple minutes, one other thing I want to, if you haven't read it yet, we'll probably read it at some point together, but just as a teaser trailer here for you. One of Thomas's first works ever that he wrote as a 21-year-old kid, okay? 21-year-old man, really. There was an age-old debate between Eastern and Western philosophy and philosophers at the time that he wrote his first ever work that we have on record. He was 21 years old. It was called On Being in Essence. And he basically addressed this age-old debate between the East and the West, and some confusion about what is being exactly and what is the essence of a thing exactly. And he starts that work. That work, by the way, changed all of the history of philosophy forever. From that point on, nobody ever debated the question again. At 21, he wrote this work that completely transformed philosophy. But there was never any debate after that. It was done. It was such a thorough and beautifully written work. Only 20 pages, though, if that. It was less than that, I think. But anyways, so incredible little work. It's not very well known by him, but I mean, it's not very well known. But he starts that with one of the most important lines that perhaps have ever been written in philosophy. He starts that work by saying, the smallest error in the beginning will result in great errors in the end. So it's very important when we talk about the foundational realities of things. It's very important that we have a clear understanding of what we're talking about. Because if we make a small error in this initial consideration, it will lead to catastrophic errors later. Amy, it's called, this work is called On Being in Essence. So the Latin is De Ente et Essentia, but it's a fantastic treatise on resolving that issue. So what I would like to do, actually, what I think will be fun is, and let me know if this would be interesting to you guys, is Monday through Friday we can plug along through this little chapter by chapter, 15-20 minute conversation like we're having today. But then on Saturday, maybe we could just sit there and read 15-20 pages together and read De Ente et Essentia, or read a longer chapter of some other great work, so it'd be kind of fun to go through. So if you had trouble finding the podcast here, this live this morning, thanks for your patience. I think I will do a timer, as I mentioned earlier, a countdown, give people time to get their cup of coffee and roll on in, so they don't miss the beginning of the reading of the chapter. But there you go. So, well, thank you all for joining me. Any other questions or anything before we wrap up here? And if not, that's fine. Tomorrow, as we get further on in the notions and the topics that we discuss or that we examine are going to get more complicated, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be wonderful. So don't miss it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming on by. Well, cheers.